Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Welcome back to another Live with Your Lobbyist update on Facebook. We're back. We think it's the 14th week of the session, if we've done our math right. So as everybody is jumping on here this morning, as per usual, let us know where you're watching from and shout out any questions if you've got them. We're really starting to wind down in the session, so this video probably won't be as long as some of our others, but Nicole's going to kick it off this morning with an update on a few tax issues.
Yes, tax bills, revenue bills, and the like are some of the main ones that are still moving. There are a few regular general bills that are still in play, but they're pretty much getting through the process, and if they haven't, they need to move it right along. So yesterday was kind of a tax day. In the morning we had a bill in Senate tax. It was House Bill 558, which is the tax mitigation bill that lowers the rates for Class 3 and Class 4 property. Agricultural land is Class 3, residential and commercial are Class 4. The reason those rates are lowered in the bill is to mitigate the increase in the taxable value of those classes statewide. Now, that is important because if they aren't mitigated, we're going to see some tax increases in those classes. It had a good hearing. The ag groups, Montana Farm Bureau, Montana Stock Growers, and the Montana Water Resources Association were all there to express our support and stress the importance of mitigation. We wish there would have been some homeowner groups there to represent them as well, but like I said, the hearing went well, but then we were told that we found out that the bill actually, unfortunately, failed to pass executive action. Oftentimes they don't take executive action right away, but the nature of the session winding down presented us with a quicker action. It died on a tie vote, so there's still a possibility that it will move. And so as soon as this video is going over, we're going to be up there working on that issue. Hopefully get that bill moving again. Likewise, we supported House Bill 614, which was heard yesterday as well, that exempts pulse processing equipment from taxation. This is kind of a different approach, but as you know, our organization has a long history of supporting the repeal of business equipment tax, and while this only would exempt certain types of equipment, and that would only be new equipment that comes on after the beginning of next year, we did support that bill. Obviously, most of you probably know, many of you are pulse growers yourselves, but for those of you who don't know, Montana is the #1 grower of pulse crops in the United States, which is actually really neat. We pride ourselves in our high quality wheat production and our high quality beef that we raise here, but we also should be proud of the fact that we raise really high quality and a large quantity of pulse crops. So if this bill were to pass, it will hopefully increase investment in pulse processing within the state, so we can have more opportunities to market our products in state and add value to them before sending them out to the consumers of the world. That bill also was tabled, unfortunately, but there's going to be efforts to get it off the table as well. So stay tuned. We might have more positive news for you next week, which actually might be our last week. Yes. We were talking about that this morning. There was the talk of the session being done by Easter. That now does not seem to be the case. They might have to come back for a few days after the Easter break, but we will be watching, and most of our bills will hopefully have passed and been through the process before then. So we will see. We have Laura joining us from Big Timber. Hi, Laura.
All right, so a couple things that I will visit with you guys about this morning. We're still working on the AIS bills, the aquatic invasive species bills, and trying to get that package moved through the legislature before everybody goes home. That is some pretty heavy duty lifting to do at this point in the session. Frankly, it really would have been great if we could have gotten this started a lot earlier in the session, because there are a lot of stakeholders involved here and everybody is on the menu, so to speak, for footing the bill for paying for this program. So as you might imagine, there's a lot of vocal people sharing their opinions about who should and should not be footing the bill. I talked last week about Senate Bill 363, and that bill moved through the Senate quickly. It actually had its House hearing this week on Wednesday, and it was amended heavily on the Senate floor last Friday afternoon. There was a number of different amendments put on that bill. And essentially, the Cliff Notes version of those amendments are that the fee that was going to be assessed to irrigated agriculture was struck from the bill. So we are relieved to hear that, because agriculture was additionally going to be sort of double charged, because we will be paying through our pumping costs by higher utility bills, because hydroelectric facilities are also going to see a huge increase in their be assessed a big increase to help pay for this program. So anybody that uses electricity to run a pivot, if you pump water out of a river or stream to get it down an irrigation canal, will all be paying through increased electricity bills. Across the gamut, actually. So we did feel like agriculture was already at the table. Additionally, our main concern was being the only surface water diverter that was tagged with an additional fee. There's a number of other surface water diverters that should be at the table as well, too, to help spread the wealth, so to speak. Cities, municipalities, anybody that uses surface water, frankly. So that was the main amendment we were glad to see, not because we don't want to do our fair share to help mitigate this problem, but also agriculture was not responsible for creating this problem in the first place, so we don't see the need for our industry to foot a larger portion of the bill than is necessarily fair. However, there are still a lot of concerns with how it is funded from the hydroelectric utilities and energy groups who are now footing a very large portion of the bill. There was also an increase in out-of-state fishing licenses as well as in-state fishing licenses too. So we heard a lot from those different entities in the hearing. I do predict that before it comes out of the House Natural Resources Committee, it's going to be amended yet again. So we don't really know what the next format's going to look like, but the unfortunate part of that now is that we really are kind of under the wire to get this bill passed and in place. And so things happen very, very quickly, which leaves us open to some assumed risk for getting a lot of amendments on that maybe we would have had time to work around earlier in the session. Up today in the Senate Natural Resources Committee is the second part of the AIS package. It's House Bill 622 that's being carried by Representative Cuff. And this bill was actually also pretty heavily amended in the House before it was sent over to the Senate. There was a lot of changes there as well, but this bill houses the advisory council and sort of the structure for how the AIS program will be implemented and run in our state once the session is over. So it creates an advisory council. Agriculture does have a seat on that advisory council, so we are thankful to be at the table to be discussing that. Additionally, this bill also allows the Department of Fish, Wildlife, and Parks to put some teeth into their check stations and the boat decontamination stations during the spring, summer, and fall months when we see a lot of boat traffic out on the road. This bill actually creates fines for people who don't stop at a mandatory check station and allows law enforcement to, implement and enforce those fines. So we do think that's good, because the biggest issue here is to not spread the zebra mussel any farther than it's already gotten in the state, and do our best to keep it where it has been found so far. And so we think that really in order to do that, there have to be consequences for folks who don't play by the rules, whether intentionally or unintentionally. So we were excited to see some strength put behind the decontamination and boat check stations to actually make them a system that will work. So We'll have more updates probably on AIS next week in what will probably be our follow-up video, and also you'll probably see some more updates just in the wrap-up of our legislative highlights newsletter as we get closer to the end of the session. Switching from aquatic invasive species to terrestrial invasive species, we had a weed bill up yesterday in the Senate Fish and Game. It is Representative Kelly Flynn's House Bill 434. And essentially what Representative Flynn did is he took the model from the Department of Agriculture's Noxious Weed Trust program, and he is replicating that model in Department of Fish, Wildlife, and Parks using Pittman-Robertson dollars. So we support this because, as we all know, noxious weeds are very proliferate. They don't recognize property boundaries, and you might have the most aggressive and thorough noxious weed protocol on your private property, but we all know that if your neighbor doesn't spray, the best you're going to do is just try to keep them to your fence line. And the same is true when we begin talking about state and federal lands as well. So we really think that Representative Flynn has done a lot of great work with this bill and setting up a program in FWP that will allow local groups like county weed boards, county commissioners, conservation districts, other nonprofit organizations to apply for those grant monies to complement the work and add to the effectiveness of what the grant monies handed out through the Noxious Weed Trust that Department of Ag is doing. So we think that's a great bill. We supported it. I predict it'll probably be out of that committee early next week as well, because like we said, they all want to go home and they're trying to get done as quickly as they can too. So I do see we have some folks on, so let us know if you have any questions. Give us a comment to let us know where you're watching from this morning. And we'll hang around for a little bit. That's probably, I think, really about all we've got this morning.
Yeah, it's going to be a short video, but Chelcie is going to tell you about the shortest bill hearing ever.
I almost forgot.
So
Yes.
it's pretty, some of these hearings can be very drawn out. In fact, there's been some this week that have been hours long.
Much longer than expected.
But this morning, that was not the case. So let's hear about that.
I almost forgot. Thank you for the reminder. I even put it in the title so I wouldn't forget. So I had an 8 o'clock hearing this morning in Senate Finance and Claims on House Bill 228, which did a little bit of restructuring with the money that is in the Montana Sage Grouse Stewardship Fund to run the habitat and conservation program in the state. And we've supported this bill. It has been through several hearings and is now just making its way through the Finance and Claims Committee because it does have a fiscal note since it deals with money. And typically whether you're in the Appropriations Committee or the Finance and Claims Committee, they're very adamant about sticking to the fiscal notes and only talking about the money and not getting off track and really just wanting to focus on what these dollars will do. Well, this morning, the Senate Finance and Claims Committee had a very long board before them. They had several actually pretty substantial bills. I believe the gas tax was in fact one of them. So they were in for a long haul. Thankfully, they put our bill first, which is always great when that happens, when the committee has a long board. And the speaker, or the bill sponsor, Representative Keene, stood up in his opening, was approximately 30 seconds long, and he said, I have instructed all the proponents to say 5 words or less, and we'll be out of your hair. So it was a little bit tongue-in-cheek, of course, because for most of us proponents, we can't even say our name and the organization we represent in 5 words or less, but we did our best. Everybody was very short and sweet, and the bill hearing was less than 5 minutes. From the time that I left the house this morning, walked to the Capitol, sat in the committee hearing, and walked back to our house was not less than 30 minutes. So that never happens, but it's always a great, or it doesn't happen often, I should say, but it's always kind of a nice refresher when it does. I'm hoping that maybe my AIS bill this afternoon and Senate Natural Resources can follow in the footsteps of the Sage Grouse bill, and we can all get on the road headed home for an early weekend, but we'll see how that goes as well.
It most likely won't. But it's a heavy lift. It's a lot of policy to discuss. So when there are bills that really need a lot of discussion, it's great when the committee gives them their needed attention. So I think that both ways are good as long as they give them their attention. It sounds like Finance and Claims got the message that this is well supported, and the wheels are greased to see that bill passed.
So. Yeah,
so that's good.
I'm not worried about that one. So last call for questions. If anybody has a question about a piece of legislation, if you jumped on late, Nicole talked about some tax bills earlier. So if anybody wants a recap on that, throw a question out at us. We've talked about pretty much weed and invasive species bills and tax bills this morning. So last call if anybody has got a question. We'll wait a few more seconds in case somebody is typing one out and wants to get it up there. Of course, we do check the comments as well, and we will get back to folks if they do have questions. And we think that next week we're planning, actually next week's going to be hi Dawn, thanks.
It's cloudy here, but we'll still have a nice day. I hope
It is
you're having
warm.
a nice sunny day, Dawn.
Yes, I hope
It might
so
rain.
too. I think we may be getting some rain because it was warm on my walk to the Capitol, but very cloudy. So I think we're in the market maybe for some rain, which is a good thing in Montana this time of year. So
one other thing I would add, if you have a senator on Senate tax, reach out to them and ask them to push for House Bill 558, the tax mitigation bill. We're hoping to get that bill out of there, and they need to hear from you about why it's important. There was some testimony that this bill harms counties, and that's not actually the case because county governments can float their mills, and they will, and counties will be made whole. So what this bill will do is make sure that you don't get a tax increase that's just corresponding to the increase in market value or taxable value of your class 3 and 4 property. So please reach out to them. We'll have an update for you next week, and hopefully it will be on the governor's desk.
hopefully, fingers crossed. And next week is going to be our final live broadcast of the 65th session. So
unless something blows up.
Yeah. Now that I've said that,
There's
something
always
will
that.
blow up. But that's the plan, everyone. The plan is that next week's going to be our final live broadcast. So, be sure that you pencil us in for our grand finale, because we'll probably be a couple days early with next Friday being Good Friday. The morning, Allison. Thanks. You're welcome. Thanks for watching. With next Friday being Good Friday and the Easter holiday, the legislature will adjourn or recess for the Easter break on the Thursday before Good Friday and not come back till that Tuesday. Good question, John. Any idea when the confirmation hearing will be for the Board of Livestock members? No.
We do not know yet, but we know that committee has been expecting the nominations and looking for them, and so I would expect that they will try to get that scheduled as soon as possible.
Yes, and we did learn this morning that the nominations are now an LC, which is the first step to it becoming an actual bill and getting it scheduled for hearing. So fingers crossed that we get to crank that out next week as well and get those confirmation hearings completed for those Board of Livestock members. So, all right. Thanks for the questions, everybody. Thanks for chiming in with your comments, and we will see you on probably Wednesday or Thursday of next week.
Yep. Have a good one.
Okay. Bye, everybody.